The gravy boat shattered against the wall 3 inches from Emma's head. "You think you can embarrass me in front of everyone?" Her father's voice cracked through the dining room like thunder, his face crimson with rage and whiskey. "Answer me!" Emma's hands trembled as she pressed herself against the floral wallpaper, feeling the edges of her mother's wedding china frame dig into her back. Around the table, her relatives had gone statue still. Aunt Carol's fork hung suspended halfway to her mouth. Uncle James stared intently at his mashed potatoes. Her younger sister Lily had tears streaming down her face, but she didn't make a sound. They never did. "Dad, I just said that maybe we could—" His hand connected with her cheek before she could finish. The slap echoed through the suddenly silent room, followed by the tinkling sound of her mother's good silverware falling to the hardwood floor. Emma tasted copper. Her vision swam, but she didn't cry. She'd learned years ago that tears only made it worse. "You said I drink too much. In front of my own brother." Her father advanced on her, and she could smell the bourbon rolling off him in waves. "You ungrateful little—" The doorbell rang. Everyone froze. Her father's hand was raised for another blow, hanging in the air like an axe about to fall. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs so hard she thought everyone could hear it. The doorbell rang again. Longer this time. Insistent. "Who the hell could that be?" her father snarled, but he lowered his hand. "Everyone we know is here." Emma's mother finally moved, her hands fluttering nervously to smooth her pearl necklace. "I'll get it," she whispered, her voice small and apologetic as always. "You stay put," her father commanded. He straightened his sweater vest, smoothed back his thinning hair, and transformed his expression into something almost pleasant. The mask he showed the outside world. Probably just neighbors with a goddamn pie. Emma stayed pressed against the wall, her cheek throbbing. She caught Lily's eye across the room and tried to give her a reassuring look. "It's okay," she wanted to say. "It's almost over. Just a few more hours and we can leave." Her father yanked open the front door, his customer service smile fixed in place. It died immediately. "Richard Brennan?" The voice that came from the doorway was smooth as expensive scotch, cold as December ice. Emma couldn't see who was speaking, but something about that voice made every hair on the back of her neck stand up. Not from fear, from something else entirely. Something that felt almost like recognition, though she'd never heard it before in her life. Who's asking? Her father's voice had taken on a different quality, uncertain, almost nervous. Someone who doesn't like to be kept waiting on doorsteps. There was a pause. "Particularly on holidays. May I come in?" It wasn't really a question. Her father stepped back without another word. Emma watched, fascinated despite the pain radiating through her face, as a man entered their dining room. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from marble by someone who understood both beauty and brutality. He wore a black coat that probably cost more than her car, and beneath it, a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been made specifically for his body, which, Emma realized with a strange flutter in her stomach, it probably had been. But it was his eyes that arrested her. Pale gray, like storm clouds, and currently fixed on her father with an intensity that made her father visibly shrink. "You're late on your payment, Richard." The room, already quiet, became a vacuum. Emma's mother made a small sound, quickly stifled. "I don't know what you're talking about," her father said, but his voice shook. "There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake." The stranger's gaze swept the room, cataloging everything. His eyes passed over Emma, then snapped back. Lingered. Something flickered across his expression, too quick to read. "You borrowed $200,000 from my organization 6 months ago. You've made 1 payment, partial, and now you're 30 days past due on the 2nd. Emma's stomach dropped. $200,000? What had her father done? "I just need a little more time," her father said, and now he sounded almost pleading. "Business has been slow, but I've got a big deal coming through next week, I swear. Everyone has a big deal coming through next week." The stranger took a step closer to her father. Despite being slightly shorter, her father seemed to diminish in his presence. "Do you know what I do to people who waste my time with excuses, Richard?" Her father's face had gone from red to white. "Please, I have a family." "Yes." Those gray eyes found Emma again. This time they stayed. They traveled across her face, noting the red mark blooming on her cheek, the way she was still pressed against the wall, the broken gravy boat on the floor, the general atmosphere of terror that hung over the gathering like poisoned mistletoe. "I can see that." Something shifted in the room. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "What happened to your face?" The stranger addressed Emma directly, his voice gentler but no less commanding. Emma's throat went dry. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "She fell," her father interjected quickly. "Clumsy girl, always tripping over her own feet." "I wasn't asking you." The stranger didn't even look at her father. His eyes remained locked on Emma's, and she felt pinned by them. "I'm asking her." Emma's pulse thundered in her ears. She could feel her father's rage building beside her, could practically hear the litany of punishments he was mentally cataloging for later. But something about this man's gaze made her feel, for the first time in years, like maybe she could tell the truth. "He hit me," she heard herself say. The words fell into the room like stones into still water. Her father made a strangled sound. "Now listen here, that's a family matter, and you have no right." "Be quiet." The stranger still hadn't taken his eyes off Emma. "Come here." It wasn't a request. Emma found herself moving before she'd consciously decided to, her feet carrying her across the dining room. She stopped a few feet away from him, close enough to see that his eyes weren't just gray. They had flecks of silver in them, like chips of ice catching the light. He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and gently tilted her chin up with his fingers. His touch was surprisingly careful. He examined her cheek, and something dark and dangerous passed over his face. "You don't hit her anymore," he said, still looking at Emma but clearly addressing her father. "In fact, you don't touch her anymore. You don't speak to her unless she addresses you first. You don't even look at her unless she gives you permission. Do you understand?" "This is my house!" Her father's voice had found its bluster again, fueled by humiliation and alcohol. "You can't come in here and tell me how to handle my own daughter. Get the hell out before I call the police." The stranger finally looked at her father. The temperature dropped another 10 degrees. "Call them," he said softly. "Please. Call the police and explain to them how you owe $200,000 to the Moretti family. I'm sure they'd be fascinated. Almost as fascinated as the IRS would be when they learn about your offshore accounts in the Caymans. What were those for again? Certainly not the money you've been skimming from your partner's construction company." Emma's father opened and closed his mouth like a fish drowning in air. "That's what I thought." The stranger returned his attention to Emma. "What's your name?" "Emma," she whispered. "Emma." He said it like he was tasting it. "I'm Luca Moretti, and I'm going to give your father a choice." He finally released her chin, but didn't step back. "Choice 1, he pays me what he owes, with interest, by Monday at 5 p.m. Choice 2, Emma comes to work for me until the debt is settled. Her labor, her time, and her complete safety guaranteed by my personal word. 3 months, after which the debt is forgiven and she's free to go." "What?" Emma and her father spoke simultaneously. "That's insane," her father sputtered. "You can't just take my daughter." "I'm not taking anyone. I'm offering an alternative." Luca's voice remained calm, almost pleasant. "You gambled money you didn't have on horses that didn't win. You made promises you can't keep. But I'm a reasonable man, and it's Thanksgiving. So I'm giving you options." "I'll get you the money," her father said quickly. "I swear I'll have it by Monday." "You won't." Luca's certainty was absolute. "You don't have it, and you have no way to get it. We both know this. The question is whether you're going to keep lying about it." Emma's mind reeled. 3 months working for a man who was clearly dangerous, clearly connected to something she didn't want to think too hard about. But the alternative was staying here, in this house, with her father's rage and her mother's silent complicity, and the constant, suffocating fear. What would I be doing? She found herself asking. If I agreed. Emma, no! Lily's voice cracked across the room. You can't. But Emma kept her eyes on Luca Moretti. Up close, she could see the scar that ran along his jaw, barely visible. Could see the expensive watch on his wrist, the subtle bulge under his coat that was probably a gun. Could see, most importantly, that when he looked at her, he didn't see something to hit or control or diminish. He saw a person. Administrative work, mostly, Luca said. I need someone to manage my appointments, handle correspondence, organize my files. Someone detail-oriented and discreet. In return, you'd have a room in my house, 3 meals a day, and a weekly allowance. At the end of 3 months, you walk away with the debt cleared and a professional reference that will open any door you want opened. This is kidnapping. Emma's mother had finally found her voice. We could report you. You could, Luca agreed mildly, but you won't. Because if the police start looking into this family's finances, they're going to find some very interesting discrepancies. And Richard here is going to find himself explaining not just the gambling debts, but also the tax evasion, the construction fraud, and that DUI he bribed his way out of last spring. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I do my research. Emma felt something loosen in her chest. A knot she'd been carrying for so long she'd forgotten it was there. When would I start? She asked. Emma! Her father's voice held a warning edge. You're not actually considering this. Monday was your deadline for the money, Luca said, ignoring her father completely. But I'll give you until tomorrow, noon. Pack what you need. I'll send a car. You can't make me go with you, Emma said, testing him. Right? This is my choice. Something that might have been respect flickered in his eyes. Completely your choice. If you'd rather stay here, I'll find another way to collect from your father. I always do. Emma looked at her father, who was turning purple. At her mother, who'd gone back to wringing her hands. At Lily, who was crying openly now. At her aunt and uncle, who'd probably go home and gossip about this for years, but who hadn't lifted a finger when her father hit her. Then she looked back at Luca Moretti, with his expensive suit and dangerous eyes, in the way he'd spoken to her like she was capable of making her own decisions. Noon tomorrow, she said. Where should I meet the car? A smile ghosted across Luca's face. Good girl. The driver will wait outside at 11:55. Don't be late. Now wait just a minute. Her father lunged forward, but Luca moved faster than Emma would have thought possible. Suddenly, he was between them, a wall of expensive fabric and controlled violence. You've had your minute, Luca said softly. Several thousand of them, actually, every day of her life. And you used them to make her afraid, to make her small. So no, you don't get any more minutes. Not with her. He leaned in closer, close enough that only her father could hear what he said next, but Emma was near enough to catch the words. Be happy you're breathing. For now. Her father went completely still. Luca straightened, adjusted his coat, and turned back to Emma. Tomorrow, he said, and his voice had gone gentle again. If you change your mind before then, I'll understand. But somehow, I don't think you will. Then he was gone, moving through their house like he owned it, which Emma realized with dizzy clarity, in a way, he now did. The front door closed behind him with a soft click. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then her father exploded. How dare you! He roared at Emma. How dare you embarrass me like that? Do you have any idea who that man is? What he does? But for the first time in her life, Emma didn't flinch. Someone who doesn't hit me, she said quietly. That's all I need to know. She walked out of the dining room, up the stairs, and into her childhood bedroom. She locked the door behind her, dragged her suitcase out of the closet, and started packing. 3 months, she told herself as she folded clothes with shaking hands. Just 3 months. And then freedom. real freedom, not the kind she'd been pretending to have while living in terror of her father's moods. Through the floor, she could hear shouting, her father's voice, her mother's pleading tones, the crash of something breaking, the familiar symphony of her family's dysfunction. Emma packed faster. By the time Friday morning arrived, she'd slept maybe 2 hours. She'd spent the night jumping at every sound, expecting her father to break down her door. But he never came. Apparently, even drunken and enraged, he understood that hitting her now would have consequences. Real ones. At 11:45, Emma carried her 2 suitcases downstairs. Her mother sat at the kitchen table, still in her robe, clutching a cup of coffee with both hands. "You don't have to do this," she said without looking up. "Your father will figure something out." "He won't," Emma said, "and I want to go." Now her mother did look up, and there was something like hurt in her eyes. "You want to leave us?" The question was so absurd that Emma almost laughed. "Yes, Mom. I want to leave the house where Dad hits me and you pretend not to notice. I want to leave the place where I've spent 26 years walking on eggshells and apologizing for existing." "Is that really so hard to understand?" Her mother's face crumpled. "He's not always like that. When we first married, I don't care what he was like 30 years ago," Emma interrupted, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. "I care what he's like now, and now he's someone I need to get away from." She picked up her suitcases and walked out the front door without looking back. A Blacktown car sat at the curb, engine running. As she approached, the driver got out, a broad-shouldered man in a dark suit who could have been Luca's brother, and took her bags without a word. He opened the back door for her. Emma slid into the leather interior and let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for years. The car ride took 40 minutes, winding through increasingly affluent neighborhoods until they reached a part of the city Emma had only seen in magazines. The houses here weren't houses. They were estates, sitting back from the road behind iron gates and manicured lawns. The car turned into a long driveway lined with oak trees, their bare branches creating a canopy overhead. At the end sat a stone mansion that looked like something out of an old movie, all elegant lines and tall windows. Holy, Emma caught herself. This is where he lives? The driver smiled slightly. "Mr. Moretti appreciates beauty," he said. It was the first thing he'd said the entire drive. "You'll find he's particular about his surroundings." The car stopped at the front entrance. Before Emma could reach for the door handle, it opened from outside. Luca Moretti stood there, dressed more casually than yesterday, dark jeans, a black sweater, but no less intimidating. "You came," he said, and Emma couldn't quite read his expression. "You didn't think I would? I thought you might choose the devil you know over the one you don't." He stepped back, gesturing for her to exit the car. "I'm glad you proved me wrong." Emma climbed out, very aware of how close they were standing. In daylight, she could see details she'd missed last night. The fine lines around his eyes, the dark stubble along his jaw, the way he held himself with the absolute confidence of someone who'd never doubted his place in the world. "Come," he said. "I'll show you to your room. We can discuss the details of our arrangement over lunch." He led her through doors that must have been 12 feet tall, into a foyer with marble floors and a chandelier that probably cost more than her parents' house. Emma tried not to gawk, but it was impossible. Everything was beautiful, elegant, tasteful. Fresh flowers sat on tables. Original artwork hung on walls. "You have a lovely home," she managed. "Thank you." Luca glanced back at her. "I realize this must all be somewhat overwhelming. The circumstances of our meeting were unusual. That's one word for it." His lips twitched. Almost a smile. "You're not afraid of me." It wasn't a question, but Emma answered anyway. Should I be? Most people are. They'd reached a wide staircase that curved up to the second floor. "But then, most people haven't lived with the kind of fear you have. It changes your calibration." Makes the rest of the world's monsters seem less monstrous by comparison. Emma stopped walking. How did you know? Know what? About my father. About what he's like. You weren't just there to collect a debt yesterday. You knew what you'd find. Luca turned to face her fully. I told you, I do my research. When someone owes me money, I learn everything about them. Where they work, who they know, how they live. And in your father's case, I learned that he has a history. 2 domestic disturbance calls, both dismissed. A restraining order filed by your mother 12 years ago, then withdrawn. Neighbors who heard things but never reported them. His gray eyes held hers. I knew what I'd find. I just didn't know if you'd have the courage to leave. Why do you care? Emma's heart hammered. If you're just a loan shark or whatever, why would you care about one messed up family? Something dark passed over his face. My father used to hit my mother, he said quietly. Every Sunday after church, regular as clockwork. I was too small to stop him then. But I'm not small anymore. And when I see men like your father, men who use their fists because they have no other power, I remember that feeling. Of being helpless, of wanting someone, anyone, to intervene. He paused. No one came for my mother, but I came for you. Emma's throat tightened. What happened to her? Your mother? She died when I was 15. Heart attack officially, but I think she just got tired of being afraid. He started up the stairs again. After that, I made sure my father understood how things were going to be. He never raised his hand to anyone again. There was a story there, Emma knew. A darker story than he was telling, but she didn't push. They reached the 2nd floor and walked down a hallway lined with closed doors. Luca stopped at one near the end. This is your room, he said, opening it. Emma stepped inside and felt her breath catch. The space was easily twice the size of her bedroom at home, with a 4-poster bed, a sitting area, and French doors that opened onto a balcony. Everything was decorated in soft creams and blues, elegant but comfortable. There's a private bathroom through there, Luca said, pointing, and a walk-in closet that's currently empty, but we can arrange for clothes if you need them. I have clothes, Emma said faintly. You're serious? This is just for me? Just for you? He moved to the windows and pulled back the curtains, revealing a view of gardens that even in late November looked like something from a dream. I value my privacy, but I also believe in treating people well, especially people who work for me. About that, Emma turned to face him. What exactly will I be doing? Yesterday you said administrative work, but what does that actually mean? Exactly what it sounds like. Luca leaned against the windowsill, arms crossed. I run several legitimate businesses. Restaurants, real estate, import, export. They generate a staggering amount of paperwork. My previous assistant retired last month, and I've been drowning in contracts and correspondence ever since. You'll manage my calendar, handle my emails, organize my files. Basic administrative tasks. And the not-so-legitimate businesses? His eyebrow lifted. Direct, aren't you? If I'm going to be here, I need to know what I'm walking into. Fair. He studied her for a moment. Yes, I also call them alternative financial arrangements. Loans to people the banks won't touch. Problem solving for people who need discretion. I won't lie to you and say it's all legal. But you won't be involved in any of that. Your work will be entirely within the legitimate side of things. Why should I believe you? Because if I wanted to involve you in something illegal, I wouldn't have given you a choice about coming here in the first place. His voice was matter of fact. I'm not a good man, Emma. But I keep my word. You work for me for 3 months. You stay in this room. You eat at my table. And when the time is up, you leave. No strings. No obligations beyond the ones we agree to. Emma moved to the bed and sat down on the edge. The mattress was so soft, she almost sank into it. Why do I feel like there's more to this than you're saying? Because you're smart. Luca pushed off from the windowsill. I'll be honest with you. When I went to your father's house yesterday, I was angry. A man who owes me money, who's been dodging my calls, who has the audacity to make excuses? I intended to make an example of him. He paused. Then I walked in and saw you against that wall with the mark on your face. Saw the fear in that little girl's eyes. Your sister. Saw the way everyone in that room had learned to disappear into the furniture when your father got loud. And I realized your father's already living in a prison of his own making. Hurting him would have been redundant. So you decided to save me instead? Emma couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. Just like that? You saw a damsel in distress and decided to play knight in shining armor? No, his eyes flashed. I saw someone who was drowning and decided to throw them a rope. What you do with it is up to you. You can use it to climb out, or you can let go and sink. I don't save people, Emma. I give them opportunities. The rest is up to them. A knock at the door interrupted whatever Emma might have said. A woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and salt and pepper hair pulled back in a bun, peeked in. Excuse me, Mr. Moretti. I didn't mean to interrupt, but lunch is ready when you are. Thank you, Teresa. Luca turned back to Emma. Our housekeeper. She'll help you get settled. Take the afternoon to rest, unpack, explore the house. We'll start work on Monday. For now, just breathe. He left before Emma could respond, closing the door softly behind him. Emma sat on the too-soft bed in the too-beautiful room, in a house that belonged to a man who was definitely too dangerous, and tried to figure out what she'd gotten herself into. The weekend passed in a strange blur. Emma unpacked her meager belongings, explored the mansion's endless rooms, and tried not to feel like an imposter every time she walked across the marble floors in her Target jeans. Teresa, the housekeeper, was relentlessly kind, showing her where everything was and chatting about the house's history without ever prying into why Emma was there. Luca himself was mostly absent. Emma saw him Saturday evening in passing, dressed in another expensive suit, heading out with two men who looked like they ate nails for breakfast. He nodded to her as he passed but didn't stop to talk. Sunday, she didn't see him at all. Monday morning arrived too quickly. Emma woke at dawn, her nerves jangling, and spent an hour trying to figure out what to wear. She finally settled on black pants and a cream blouse. Professional, she hoped, without trying too hard. She made her way downstairs and found Teresa in the kitchen, making breakfast. Mr. Moretti is already in his office, Teresa said, sliding a plate of eggs and toast toward her. But eat first. He's usually there until noon without a break. What's he like? Emma asked. To work for, I mean. Teresa considered this. Demanding, particular. He expects excellence and doesn't tolerate laziness, or excuses. She paused. But he's fair, and loyal. If you do your job well, he'll move heaven and earth for you. If you betray him? She shook her head. Well, don't betray him. Not ominous at all. After breakfast, Emma found Luca's office on the first floor, behind a heavy oak door. She knocked. Come in. She pushed the door open and stepped into controlled chaos. Papers covered every surface. 2 computer monitors glowed on a massive desk. Filing cabinets stood open, overflowing with folders. Luca sat behind the desk, reading glasses perched on his nose, looking simultaneously exhausted and irritated. You weren't joking about the paperwork, Emma said. He looked up, and something in his expression eased when he saw her. You're here. Where else would I be? I wasn't sure you wouldn't leave over the weekend. He removed the glasses and rubbed his eyes. Your room has no lock. The front door is never secured during the day. You could have walked out any time. I gave you my word I'd stay for 3 months. Emma moved further into the room, surveying the disaster. Besides, I haven't worked off my father's debt yet. Your father's debt was never really the point. Emma turned to look at him. Then what was? Getting you out of that house. He held her gaze. The rest is just convenient narrative. Her heart did something complicated in her chest. You're telling me you don't actually expect me to work off $200,000 in 3 months? I'm telling you that your father will never pay me what he owes, and I've already written off the loss. The money's gone. I accepted that the moment I made the loan." He stood, moving around the desk. "But you, Emma, you were never part of the debt. You were always a choice. My choice to offer you a way out. Your choice to take it." "I don't understand," Emma whispered. "Why would you do that?" "I told you. I remember being helpless." He stopped a few feet away from her. "And I'm not anymore. So when I see someone who needs help, and I have the power to give it, I do. It's not complicated." "It feels complicated," his mouth quirked. "That's because you're trying to find the catch. The ulterior motive. Trust me, I understand. But sometimes, Emma, people do things simply because it's the right thing to do." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him. But years of living with her father had taught her that when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. "So, what happens now?" she asked instead. "Now?" Luca gestured at the chaos around them. "Now you help me restore order to this disaster. I have 3 contract negotiations this week, a restaurant opening on Friday, and approximately 400 emails I haven't answered. Think you can handle it?" Emma looked at the mountains of paper, the overflowing inbox on the computer screen, the general state of professional emergency. Then she rolled up her sleeves. "Show me where to start." They worked side by side for hours. Luca explained his filing system, which was barely a system at all, and Emma immediately began reorganizing it into something logical. She set up a proper digital calendar, color-coded by urgency. She drafted email responses for his approval, learning his voice and style quickly. They fell into a rhythm. He'd explain something, she'd execute it, he'd approve or correct, and they'd move on. It was almost easy, normal. Like this was just a regular job and he was just a regular boss, and not a man who'd threatened her father's life 2 days ago. "You're good at this," Luca said around 2 p.m., looking at the transformed filing system with something like amazement. "I worked as an administrative assistant at a law firm for 3 years before my dad pressured me to quit," Emma said, not looking up from the email she was drafting. "He didn't like me being around all those men," which was ridiculous because half of them were gay and the other half were married. "But logic wasn't his strong suit. He isolated you." "Yes," she hit send and turned to face him. "But let's not play armchair psychologist, okay? I know what my father is. I know what he did. And I know I should have left years ago. But knowing something and being able to do something about it are different things. I'm not judging you. Aren't you, even a little?" Emma crossed her arms, wondering why I stayed so long, why I didn't fight back. "No." His voice was firm. "I'm wondering how you stayed as whole as you did. How you kept your spirit intact when everything around you was designed to break it." He leaned back in his chair. "That takes strength most people don't have." Emma felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back furiously. "Don't," she said. "Don't be kind to me right now. I can handle your expectations and your demands, but if you're kind, I'll fall apart." "Then fall apart." He said it so simply. "This is a safe place to do it. I don't even know you. Maybe that makes it easier." They looked at each other across the reorganized office, and Emma felt something shift between them. Something that felt dangerous in an entirely different way than her father's violence had been dangerous. Before she could examine it too closely, Luca's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his entire demeanor changed, became harder, colder. "I need to take this," he said, standing. "Why don't you break for the day? You've already done more than I expected. It's only 2 p.m. "Emma," his voice held a warning. "Take the afternoon, explore the grounds, read a book, whatever you want. Just give me some privacy for this call." She recognized a dismissal when she heard one. "Of course." She left the office, but not before seeing him answer the phone with a curt, "What?" that sent a chill down her spine. The man in the office just now, that wasn't the Luca who'd been working beside her all morning. That was someone else, someone harder, someone more dangerous. Emma spent the rest of the afternoon in the library, because of course this house had a library, complete with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a rolling ladder. She tried to read, but her mind kept drifting back to Luca, to the way he'd looked at her, to the things he'd said. This is a safe place to do it. Was it, though? Was anywhere truly safe when the person offering sanctuary was himself a storm? She was still in the library when Teresa came to tell her dinner was ready. Emma followed her to a formal dining room, yet another space that looked like it belonged in a magazine, and stopped short. The table was set for two. "Mr. Moretti requested you join him," Teresa said with a smile. "He's just finishing up some business." Before Emma could decide if this was appropriate, or terrifying, or both, Luca appeared in the doorway. He'd changed into casual clothes, dark jeans and a gray sweater that made his eyes look like silver, and he looked more relaxed than she'd seen him. "I hope you don't mind," he said, moving to pull out her chair. "I thought we could debrief on the day, discuss what's working and what isn't." "This is a lot of setup for a work meeting," Emma said, but she sat. "I'm Italian. Food is important." He took the seat across from her. "Besides, you live here now. We should probably get comfortable eating together." Teresa brought out the first course, a salad with fresh mozzarella and tomatoes that shouldn't exist in November, but somehow did. "This is incredible," Emma said after the first bite. "Teresa's been with my family since I was a child. She has connections with every specialty grocer in the city." Luca smiled. "It's one of her many talents." They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes. Then Emma asked the question that had been nagging at her all day. "Who called this afternoon? The call that made you look like you wanted to kill someone?" Luca's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "You don't miss much, do you? I grew up having to read moods to avoid getting hit. You develop an eye for it." "Fair enough." He set down his fork. "It was someone who owed me money. Someone who, unlike your father, has both the means to pay and the audacity to try to renegotiate our terms after the fact. What are you going to do? Nothing you need to worry about." His voice had taken on that harder edge again. "Your work is in the office, remember? The legitimate side of things." "That's not really an answer." "No," he agreed. "It's not." They looked at each other across the table, and Emma saw the moment he made a decision. "I'm going to visit him tomorrow night. Remind him why it's a bad idea to break agreements with me. It won't be pleasant, but it will be effective. You're going to hurt him. Probably." Luca's voice was matter-of-fact. "Not severely. I'm not a sadist, but fear is a powerful motivator, and sometimes people need to be reminded what they have to lose." Emma should have been horrified. She should have been planning her exit strategy, figuring out how to get back home, back to safety. Instead, she heard herself ask, "Will you be safe?" His expression softened. "Worried about me? I just got here. It would be inconvenient if you died before I finished organizing your filing system." He laughed, a real laugh, surprised and genuine. "Then I'll do my best to stay alive, if only to avoid inconveniencing you." The rest of dinner passed with easier conversation. He asked about her life, her dreams, what she wanted to do after the 3 months were up. She found herself telling him things she hadn't said out loud in years, about wanting to go back to school, maybe study business, open her own firm someday. "You could do it," he said with certainty. "You're smart, organized, and you're not afraid of hard work. That's all you really need." "And money," Emma added wryly. "Money helps." "Well," Luca stood as Teresa cleared their plates, "that's part of what this is about. The debt doesn't really need to be worked off, but I'm not going to have you here for free. You're doing excellent work. I'll pay you accordingly." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." His voice was firm. "You're worth compensating. Consider it back payment for all the years your father should have been supporting your ambitions instead of crushing them." Emma felt that dangerous prickling in her eyes again. "Stop being kind to me." "Why? Because it makes you feel things?" He moved closer, and suddenly the vast dining room felt very small. "Good. Feel them." "You're allowed to." They stood there close enough that Emma could see the shadow of stubble on his jaw, could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle. close enough that when he reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, she felt it like an electric shock. "I should go," she whispered. "You should," he agreed. But neither of them moved. The moment stretched, taut as a wire. Emma's heart hammered. Luca's eyes had gone dark, focused on her mouth. Then he stepped back. "Good night, Emma," he said, his voice slightly rough. "Sleep well." She fled. Only later, lying in her too-soft bed in her too-beautiful room, did Emma realize she hadn't wanted to flee at all. She'd wanted to stay. The next 3 weeks passed in a rhythm that became almost comfortable. Emma worked in Luca's office during the day, transforming chaos into order. They had dinner together most evenings, conversations that ranged from business to books to debates about movies they'd both seen. He was, Emma discovered, surprisingly well-read. Funny when he wanted to be. Thoughtful in ways that caught her off guard. But there was always the other side. The calls he took in private. The nights he went out with his men and came back with blood on his knuckles. The way people looked at him when they came to the house, with fear and respect and sometimes hate. Emma told herself she was just his employee, that the dinners were just debriefs, that the way her pulse jumped when he entered a room was just adrenaline. She was lying, and they both knew it. It came to a head 3 days before Christmas. Emma had volunteered to work through the holiday. She had nowhere else to go, and the thought of going back to her parents' house made her physically ill. Luca had raised an eyebrow, but hadn't argued. But on December 22nd, everything changed. Emma was in the office, finalizing documents for a real estate deal, when she heard shouting from the foyer. Male voices, angry. Then Luca's voice, cold and commanding. She went to the door and cracked it open. 3 men stood in the entryway with Luca. One of them was bleeding from a cut above his eye. All of them looked furious. "Done waiting," one was saying. "You said you'd handle it. It's been 3 weeks and nothing's changed." "I said I'd handle it," Luca replied, his voice dangerously quiet. "I didn't give you a timeline. If you're unhappy with my methods, you're free to solve your own problems. We paid you, and you'll get your results. But on my timeline, not yours." Luca took a step forward, and Emma saw the men actually retreat. "Now get out of my house before I forget we're supposed to be working together." They left, but not before casting looks at Luca that promised this wasn't over. Luca stood in the foyer for a long moment after they'd gone, his shoulders tense, his hands clenched into fists. Then he seemed to sense Emma watching. He turned, and his expression when he saw her was complicated. "How much did you hear?" "Enough." She stepped fully into the hallway. "You're in danger, aren't you? From them?" "I'm always in danger. It's part of the job description." "Don't joke." Emma moved closer. "I'm serious." "Those men were talking about you like I'm an obstacle they need to remove." Luca's smile didn't reach his eyes. "They're not the first. They won't be the last." "How can you be so calm about this?" "Because losing my calm doesn't change the situation." He crossed to her, and she saw the tension in every line of his body. "This is my world, Emma. It's not pretty. It's not safe. But it's mine, and I know how to navigate it. Let me help." "No." The word was sharp, final. "Why not?" "Because helping me means getting involved in the parts of my life I promise to keep you away from." His voice softened. "You're not part of this, Emma. You're separate. Clean. And that's how it's going to stay." "What if I don't want to be separate?" The words were out before she could stop them. Luca went very still. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Emma took a breath. "I'm saying I'm tired of pretending this is just a job, that you're just my boss, that I don't care what happens to you. Emma!" Her name was a warning. "No, let me finish." She moved closer until they were nearly touching. "I know what you are, what you do. And I know I should be afraid, should want to leave, should—" He kissed her. It was nothing like she'd imagined, and she had imagined it, late at night in her too soft bed. It was fierce and desperate and tasted like confession. His hands came up to frame her face, gentle despite the intensity, and Emma melted into it. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Luca rested his forehead against hers. "We shouldn't," he said. "Probably not. You work for me. You're here because of your father's debt." "The power dynamic is complicated," Emma finished. "I know, but I'm choosing this, Luca. I'm choosing you. Isn't that what matters?" He pulled back to look at her, really look at her, and Emma saw something raw in his expression. "I'm not a good man," he said. "I've done things that would make you run if you knew." "Then don't tell me." She reached up to touch his face. "Or tell me, and let me decide for myself. But stop trying to protect me from you. I'm not a child. I'm not breakable. And I'm not afraid. You should be. Maybe," she smiled. "But I'm not." He kissed her again, slower this time, and Emma felt herself falling into something that definitely wasn't safe and probably wasn't smart, but felt more right than anything in her life ever had. When Christmas morning arrived, Emma woke to find a small box on her nightstand. Inside was a key. She found Luca in the kitchen, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper like it was any other morning. "What's this?" She held up the key. "A key to the house." He didn't look up from the paper. "Your 3 months are almost up. I thought you might like the option to stay." "Stay," Emma repeated slowly. As in stop pretending this is temporary." Now he did look at her, and his eyes were serious. "As in we both know you're not leaving in 2 weeks. As in I don't want you to go, and I'm hoping you don't want to leave." Emma's heart hammered. "And what would I be staying as? Your employee?" "Your mine," he interrupted. "Just mine. We'll figure out the details as we go. But Emma, I'm not good at pretty words or romantic gestures. So I'm just going to be direct. I want you to stay, not because of any debt. Not because of work. Because of this." He gestured between them. "Because when you're not here, the house feels empty. Because you make me want to be the man you think I am instead of the one I've become. Because—" Emma crossed the kitchen and kissed him, cutting off whatever else he might have said. "Yes," she said when they broke apart. "I'll stay." His smile was like sunrise. "Marry me." Emma choked. "What?" "Marry me." He said it like it was obvious, like it was simple. "I told you I'm not good at romance. I don't do dating or courtship or any of that. I see something I want, I claim it. And I want you, permanently, officially. So marry me." "That's insane," Emma managed. It's only been a month. You can't just—" "I can. And I am." He took her hands. "Look, I know how this looks. I know what people will say. But I've never been more certain of anything. You fit into my life like you were made for it. You're not afraid of me. You see the worst parts of me, and you stay anyway. So yes, I'm asking you to marry me after a month. Sue me for knowing what I want." Emma stared at him. This man who was dangerous and kind and brutal and gentle all at once. This man who'd pulled her out of one life and offered her another. This man who was looking at her like she was something precious. "This is crazy," she whispered. "Completely," he agreed. "People are going to think you coerced me, or bought me. Let them think what they want. My father will lose his mind. Good." His voice hardened. "Let him choke on it." Emma laughed, slightly hysterical. "You're serious." "You're actually serious." "I've never been more serious about anything." He pulled her closer. "Say yes, Emma. Take this key. Take this house. Take me. All of it. All of me. And let me give you the life you deserve." She should say no. Should call this what it was. Too fast. Too intense. Too everything. Should protect herself from the inevitable crash. Instead, she heard herself say, "Yes." Luca's kiss was triumphant, possessive, and when he pulled back, his smile was fierce. "You're mine now," he said, officially, "and I protect what's mine." 2 weeks later, they were married in a small ceremony in the mansion's garden. Just Teresa, the driver, and 2 of Luca's most trusted men as witnesses. Emma wore a simple white dress they'd bought the day before. Luca wore a black suit that made him look like the dangerous prince from a dark fairy tale. They spoke vows that promised partnership, protection, and permanence. And when the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Luca lifted Emma's chin and kissed her like he was staking a claim for the whole world to see. "Mine," he whispered against her lips. "Yours," she whispered back. Later, at the small reception Teresa had insisted on throwing, Emma's phone rang, her father's number. She let it go to voicemail. Then she blocked it. "No regrets?" Luca asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. Emma leaned back into him, feeling safe and claimed and chosen. "Not even one." 3 months ago, she'd been a woman pressed against a wall, afraid to breathe. Now she was Emma Moretti, wife to one of the most dangerous men in the city, living in a mansion that felt like home. It shouldn't have worked. By every logical measure, it should have been a disaster. But when Luca spun her into a dance on the garden terrace, with Teresa beaming and the winter sun catching the ring on her finger, Emma realized something fundamental. Love wasn't safe, but neither was fear. And she'd rather spend her life with a dangerous man who saw her worth than waste another second with safe men who saw nothing at all. "I love you," she said, the words surprising them both. Luca's eyes went soft. "Say it again." "I love you. Again." "I love you, Luca Moretti. My husband. My choice." He kissed her there in the garden, in front of everyone, with the winter sun shining down and the bare trees bearing witness. And for the first time in her life, Emma wasn't afraid of what came next. She was ready for it.